This is a special event for us because among the many things the Boston Atheneum is, it is a rare book and special collections library, as well as a membership library, a circulating library. And one of the strong collections we have is devoted to artist books. We have always collected artist books of one kind or another, and since Stanley Cushing became our first curator of rare books, we have done so in a much more aggressive, ambitious, and systematic way. And we're interested in artist books of all kinds, and of course one of those kinds, one of those genre, has to do with pop-up books, which is a category within a much larger category that people sometimes call eccentric books. That was the name of a wonderful exhibition at Yale not too long ago. Now, it's one thing to produce a very expensive, rare book, very expensive artist book that is in very limited quantities, only a few copies, or perhaps only one, a singleton, as we say. It's something else to have a really good idea about a pop-up book and be able to produce it for a much, much larger audience, for really as a trade book, and have it have all the inventiveness and ingenuity, skill, craft, and art that you find in a much more specialized book. And that's what our speaker today, Chuck Fischer, has been able to do. He's one of the most talented and sought-after artists in America today, and he's the author and illustrator of two previous books. One is called Great American Houses and Gardens, a pop-up book, which I saw a few years ago. It's really quite wonderful. And also Wall Coverings, applying the language of color and pattern. Both of those books are published by Universe, which is also the publisher of his new book, which is, of course, devoted to the White House. And that's what he's going to talk about to us today. And he obviously has some examples up front, and then he'll be signing copies of his book after his talk. He has been recently a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome. Lucky he. Wonderful place to do creative work. And some of his designs are now in the permanent collection of the Cooper-Hewitt Museum. So please join me in welcoming Chuck Fischer to the Boston Atheneum. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it's great to be here, and here at the Atheneum, and in this beautiful spring day in Boston. So I'm going to start out just talking a little bit about some history of pop-up books, and then go into to showing what it's like to put one together for a contemporary book. But first of all, I'd like to thank my dear friend Marjorie Lack for introducing me and my work to the Boston Atheneum, and for suggesting this program. So thank you very much. And anyway, here we go. I'm going to show first some icons of pop-up books, and I'm going to start with this book. This is all the examples I'm showing today are from the library at the Cooper-Hewitt Museum in New York City, and they part of the Smithsonian Institution, and they have one of the largest collections of pop-up movable books in the country. So this book is from 1550, and this is a Vauvel, and this is a book. The circular disc on the right side of the page was actually printed with the book, and so the reader would actually cut this circle and then sew it to the page. So this was a very early example of the interaction of the reader with the book, and to me that's just a very key element of pop-up books, this interaction. And here is a book from 1880 by Meggendorfer. Now he created a system of rivets that are still used today, and a two-page construction that hides the mechanism. And so he's a very, very important figure in the world of pop-up movable books. This is the front of a Peep show or a tunnel book from the 1851 the Crystal Palace exhibition in London. And here is just looking through the peephole, and you can see by the perspective and the detail that is created with this Peep show. And this was actually a souvenir at the time. This is an early book, a pop-up book on Cinderella, and this is by Dean and Sons, a British publisher from the 1880s, and they're generally credited with sort of introducing children's book, being one of the first children's books publishers. And this is a detail. You can see, this isn't the clearest photograph, but the images just lift off the page. And these are really just a few of the icons of movable books. I mean, they're as I showed you, easily go back, to the 1500s and, of course, through to today. And there have been different periods in time where the pop-up book became sort of a very popular and a new innovative project. So I'm going to now talk about different constructions that are within the pop-up books. I showed you one sample of a Peep show. So when I get into my White House book, this is the first spread of my book, and the image on the left you pull out, and it creates a long perspective of the National Mall from behind the Lincoln Memorial to the Capitol building. This is a book by the illustrator Edward Gorey. This is from the late 70s, and it's called The Tunnel Calamity. And you can see all of the layers that he created as the artist to tell this one story. Another construction, a very, very important construction, is called a box and cylinder. And this is to create a volume, and it comes from the center of the page or the gutter. And oftentimes, because it's called a cylinder, this is the pop-up of the White House. You can see it creates the mass, and it creates a box-like structure. There are also sometimes towers that could come up depending on what one is trying to illustrate. These are all examples of a box and cylinder construction. There's a beautiful image of a tall sailing ship behind this middle image there. That was a great series by National Geographic on sailing ships, and that's in the box and cylinder construction. And this is a house, and this is an illustration from the story Pinocchio. Pull-out layers are generally simple constructions. This is the Hermitage, Andrew Jackson's house outside of Nashville, and I featured this in my Great American Houses and Gardens book. Generally, pull-out layers are very simple 90-degree constructions. This is from 1893, the Columbian Exhibition in Chicago. And again, this was a souvenir program. But you can see the beautiful detail in the illustrations and the perspective. Pull tabs, there's, children's books, books for grown-ups. There's this idea that pop-up books, movable books, are just children's books, but that really is not historically correct, or even through today, it's not necessarily so. I mean, they're fantastic children's books. But many pop-up books and movable books were created to educate, and I really believe in that. So within my books, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of historical information, and it's fun to sort of discover that. It's not just a visual, the first image, which can be very exciting, but you can go delve deeper into the books and learn. These are revolving pictures. This is another sample of a Vauvel, which I mentioned earlier. And this is when you move a tab on a hidden circle that's under the page. Maybe you move it 30 to 60 degrees, and the whole image changes. This is a beautiful illustration from 1719 of a Vauvel. The subject matter, it could range, through history. It's just, astronomy, astrology, a lot of medical education and navigation. It's just endless, the subject matter on pop-up books, within pop-up books. Here we have fold-outs and V-folds. This is the feature in my White House book on the First Lady's fan. And a V-fold is when 2 pages of the pop-up image are attached to the double-page spread, or attached to each side of the page. And you'll see that construction used in just myriad ways in different books. And see, it comes from the center of the book, and you'll see the attachment is on both double-page spread. Flap books, again, a great educational tool. One of my favorite flap books, unfortunately I don't have a photo of it, but when I was at the American Academy of Rome, in their special collections, Sir Humphrey Repton, the great British landscape designer, he created like the early 1800s flap books that he would create the image of the landscape before and after what it would look like once he received the commission. So it was like a very early sales tool, and it was a very successful sales tool, and just the most beautiful, beautiful illustrations. Here's a modern-day sales tool. There are pop-ups that are used in advertisements, from spaghetti sauce to Disneyland to a hotel in the foreground. And theater stories, another nice construction where you open the book and you attach the front to the back, and it creates a stand-up carousel. And so that becomes its own work of art when you create another image that sort of stands on its own and tell the story. And I use that construction within the White House book to create a carousel of staterooms. So now I'd like to talk and use my book as an illustration to show you the process that one goes through in like creating this image, where I'm actually going to talk mostly about creating the three-dimensional pop-up of the White House, which is in the center of the book. And if you can see this, maybe I'll just do a quick flip through of the book. This was the tunnel pop-up that I was talking about, where you open the window and then you pull this out. And it's quite deep to create. I don't know if you can see from your seats, but it does show, the National Mall, and then from the Lincoln Memorial to the Capitol, including the Washington Monument. And then on the sides are all the different Smithsonian Institute museums along the mall that are illustrated. And this, I just decided to choose 4th of July because it's so special and so American, and a great way to illustrate Washington, D.C., and sort of set the stage for the history of the White House. I also include sort of an origami folded up map, so that if you're going to Washington and you need a little extra map, you can take that with you. Here we have just this page deals really with the presidency, and it features the Gilbert Stuart painting. And then, like an advent calendar, I created these flaps so that you can open them and read about the symbolism within the painting. And then we have, of course, the gallery of all the presidents. And just to show you another construction in this book, this is a pull tab, and it says pull tab, so that's what you do. And it does the work for you. It opens it up. It just makes it interactive, and then you close it. And this gives the history of the White House from the competition, and a little architectural background and a timeline. It closes itself. Here we have the centerpiece of the book, which is the three-dimensional pop-up of the White House. And I'm just going to put that down for a minute and show you how I got to this place. It starts with the idea. My first book was on great American houses and gardens, and it included a number of presidential houses. And I just felt at the time, I discussed it with the publisher and everything, should we include the White House? And we thought maybe that it wasn't the place, and that it would, the importance of it and the history of it could be a book on its own. So I'd actually just put that idea to the side. So I did my first book, and then I contacted the White House Historical Association with this idea. And I worked very, very closely with them. All the content of the book was, of course, vetted through them, and all the photographic images come from their collection. So that no one had suggested this idea, and the White House Historical Association thought it was great, and so I got the go-ahead and to create this book. So then I make sketches. I make sketches of each spread I sort of fantasize, like what would I like to see? What is the most important elements, that I can show within the book? And of course, there had to be a scale pop-up of the White House, because if it is the White House, it has to be, so historically accurate and to scale. So I work with a paper engineer. I'm not an engineer. I'm the artist and the designer, and I conceived the book. But I have great help, and the fellow I work with is located in Bath, in England. So we have a lot of correspondence by email. A couple visits is a wonderful place to go and work on a book. And he happens to be very interested in American history and the presidency. So anyway, I would sketch the idea, and then David, his name is David Hawcock, he would send me a drawing, just a black and white outline. And this is, there's a sketch, there's a black and white line drawing of every piece that goes into the book. And then some pieces have to be painted by me on both sides, and then I have to make sure that the scale works and that everything then comes together and opens up to make the three-dimensional pop-up. Now also, as the designer and the artist, sometimes I have even grander ideas that end up in the book, because like it was said before, this is a trade publication, so it's, the publisher's very cost sensitive, and to keep the price at $35, which I think is very fair, it's all about glue points. So every glue point is a cost. And these books are put together by hand, and they're put together in China and printed in China. So there's a lot of considerations. But anyway, I just brought samples, which if you'd like to come up and look later. This is the original art, that every piece, that I would create and paint by hand. And, you might think there's just a few pieces that go together. But this alone, I forget, I think it's 18 different pieces of paper to scale. And I start with the platform. So everything sits on this. And this is a plan of the grounds. And I painted this on canvas because I wanted to have that aged look. And so that everything sits on this. I'm sorry, I've got it upside down. And then this was a chance to include the floor plan of the state floor with the state rooms. And you'll see, when you look at this spread, everything sits on that. You open it up, and there's the floor plan. And here is a little miniature pop-up of the Oval Office. And within my books are little booklets, so you can read about. This is the West Wing, and it includes photographs and text. And then also, this is about the gardens. And, I wanted to show you, I get first a mock-up of the pop-up, just in white paper. Just to make, that's the time when I can really see if it works. And that's the time to make any adjustments in case we need to do that before it gets, I paint the art and it might not be to scale or something. And then for the cover, which of course appears as just one, illustration, it's actually many layers. I paint the background as one piece, and I paint the elevation, and the facade is another. The title banner is yet another piece. And then the back of what we call the belly band, which holds the book together, is another scale elevation of a window. Now this is one area where I had to compromise. I thought the windows should, at least some of them, should be die cut so that you could see the view through the window. But it turns out that was an expense that we had to let go. And it's fine, but there's a lot of compromise. That's just what I kind of wanted to talk about. And then finally, I had some handouts if you wanted to create your own tunnel pop. Now I only have a couple left, but I think a lot of you have them. But anyway, if anyone's interested, there's a few more, and this is just a very simplified version of the first tunnel Peep show pop-up in the book. And if you have children or grandchildren, you might like to show them that could be colored in first. and then put together. This is a very simple construction. It's also called an accordion fold, which we've all done before, like a fan fold. And then one can make that at home, cut out the window, and you have your own original pop-up. So that's a little history of pop-up books, a little information about my new book, and now I'd like to take any questions if you have them. Yes, ma'am.
I'm interested in knowing, was the White House called the White House because of being painted white after the burning?
That's a very good. There's so many. The White House wasn't officially called the White House, I believe, in 1900. But that was its nickname for many years. It was first called the President's House. And it was called the President's House for many years. And then there's some information that was sounding a little, let's say, too royal or something. And they decided, then to call it the White House because it is out of the Indiana limestone. And but I believe officially it didn't become the White House until 1900. I'd have to double check that date. And it may be on my timeline. So. Another interesting change, one of the first suggestions to call Washington, instead of Washington, D.C., Washington, the District of Columbia, it was proposed to call it Washingtonople, as in Constantinople at the time. And it was rejected immediately. Yeah. But it's just many, many wonderful facts. Yes?
Do you use mixed media for your painting, or do you use
No, I actually use acrylics only. And I use acrylics very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, she was asking. I should answer. Yes. What is my media to create the illustrations for the books? And it's a mixed media, or she said it looked like they're watercolors or oils. And I actually predominantly use acrylics, but very much in a watercolor style. A lot of washes, a lot of sort of applying a color, taking away, and then finally, because of the reproduction and knowing in the printing process, I'll often use a pigment white or black to really add a highlight. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You're certainly not the only person in the field, but are there lots of people, or do you know all the other people who do pop-ups?
That's a good question. He's asking, are there a lot of us that do these pop-up books? There are a fair amount. Very, very well-known fellow is Robert Sabuda. Such a talented. He really about 10 years ago, I'd say, reintroduced this idea of pop-up books that appeal not just to children, but to a broad audience, and with very intricate pop-ups. We know each other. May end up at book fairs together. Different publishers. There aren't that many printers throughout the world. Really, there's just a few locations that assemble the books. So we all know who each other is, and there's something called the Movable Book Society, which I'm a member, and it's open just people that are interested in movable books, artist books. It's movablebooksociety.com if you're interested in it. It's fascinating. There's a newsletter that comes 4 times a year, and there are special programs, and it would list events that are coming up and shows on movable books. Yes, in the back? Let me see.
How far back do movable books go? Where did they come from? Is there a particular area that developed it?
She's asking. The question is, how far back did they go? Even before printed books, there were pop-up movable books, and then as printing became. I showed an example from 1550. Of course, they go earlier than that, and there really isn't a time when books weren't. That there wasn't an artist, there wasn't a designer thinking about how to get the reader involved. It's really about that interaction, with the book. So now there are different. As one looks through the goes and does some research. In fact, I don't know about the collection here, but at the Cooper-Hewitt, for instance, in New York, there is about 1,000 pop-up books in the collection. And of course, it's open to the public, and they love showing off the collection or, samples from it. So if you're in New York and you're interested, just call them and make an appointment. And they'll show, from rare books to modern day books to, like you said, artist books, maybe just one of a kind, or perhaps maybe there would be just a series of 5. So there are just so many different kinds. Yes?
I wanted to know if these are in limited edition. It seems she was saying that books are not readily available because it's a costly production.
No, the question is, are these books readily available, and are these in limited edition? They're not in limited edition. I have it's good news for me. The first printing is sold out, so a second printing is ordered. That's why it's difficult to get the White House book at this time. But in 3 months, as the second printing arrives on the boat from China, they'll be back in the stores and readily available, and we'll continue. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an original with your paintings?
These are my original paintings, so there is not an original construction of the book, because all my work, all of the artwork, is asking if there is one original. It's done on flat paper. Now, it's possible that these could be cut and assembled into one, but that's not something that has been done. Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one is, what pop-up books are you either thinking about doing or already working on?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question. He's asking what books am I thinking about doing or working on. I just finished all of the art and the text for my next pop-up book, which is a pop-up book of Christmas in New York. And that'll be out in October. And so that's been a wonderful project. I've been working on that for the last 1.5 years. And I have many ideas after that. Some of my ideas? Well, let's see. I have a soft spot for Rome and, sort of the grand tour. That's an idea. Some travel books, and maybe some more books related to American history. Yes, sir. What is the second question?
You were kind enough to put all the photos or pictures of the presidents.
Yes.
You only chose to put in maybe a dozen of the first lady.
Yes, I know. It was a tough choice. Again, that's a compromise. It is. It was really, we discussed. All the first ladies are listed, and there is also a pullout of some of the inaugural gowns of the first ladies. On the back of that are the dates and the listings of all the first ladies. But I only chose on the fan to show the contemporary first ladies back to Eleanor Roosevelt.
Leaving out Mrs. Truman.
No, Mrs. Truman's in there. Yes. Leaving out Mrs. Eisenhower, and I'll say because Mrs. Eisenhower, though, has her place on the page because the background of that page, which this is the fan that I'm talking about with the First Lady's portraits, this is a toile, and it's the background, and it's called the Eisenhower toile. And that was created for Mrs. Eisenhower, and so that is her presence on the page. Yes, ma'am.
Is that stated in there?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. And it was produced by F. Schumacher and Company, and there are actually some wonderful photographs. It was made as an upholstery fabric, but she also had a dress made out of it. And there's a great picture of Mrs. Eisenhower in this toile dress. I wanted to include it in the book, but there just wasn't room. Yes.
I know that there's evolution of art origami, and so now you have mathematicians at MIT who are constantly evolving increasingly complex origami forms.
Mm-hmm.
Is there similar evolution in the technique of the pop-up books? Because it seems as though many of the things that you're using now are the techniques that have been in existence since the existence of books.
I know. Oh, yes, thank you. The question is, and I'm not sure that I have the answer for it, is the origami, the art in origami is being studied, and how did can you just say again what you were asking? Is it's
The art of paper folding origami
right.
has evolved. It's kind of a dynamic evolving technique or technology. I'm just wondering if the technique of the pop-up is also changing over time and growing.
The question is the art of pop-up book constructions and the art of evolving like the art of origami. And the art of, I don't know that I can exactly answer that, because although I have the map is kind of a simple origami fold, the complexity of origami folds are so great because they don't require the tension to pull something up and the attachment to a page like a pop-up construction requires. So there really are still the basic constructions that I sort of went through. And it's what we're always trying to figure out, and I'm talking with David as the engineer and the other paper engineers and the other book artists. Well, there are one-of-a-kind pop-ups that are definitely very far evolved and would be more complicated than something that could be included in a trade publication. But those are generally, one-of-a-kind. And so as far as commercial available pop-up books, that we're still, just trying to adapt and add and give another layer, to really what is the traditional constructions. But that doesn't mean someone isn't just going to see something, a new idea and make it work. Yes?
Once you have more or less finalized your pop-up design, do you test it as in sort of a consumer testing to see if people are able to figure out how to make it work or if it tears too easily and that sort of thing?
Yes, the printer does that. And the question is, do we test the books to make sure that they work, to make sure that they're solid and that they don't just tear? And that the glue doesn't come undone. Yes, absolutely. And there are also different standards for children's pop-up books and pop-up books that are made for the adult market. The standards are different to the paper that can be, I won't say it tears more easily, but this book is not recommended for children, like say under 10. So yes, there is a lot. And paper quality, and that has to do with choosing the printer, choosing the paper engineer. And so he goes through all of that, and then I get the samples, the publisher and we open and close and make adjustments. There is a time period when we can make those adjustments. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I have not. Just for some. I'm always. She asked if I've done sort of one-of-a-kind artist books. At the time, I'm really concentrating on these on this trade book idea. But to get there, to get to the final result, in my studio in New York City, there are many sort of early attempts. I mean, they're me cutting, pasting, gluing, illustrating. But it's not something that I'm ready for presentation or something that I would like to submit to a show.
How did you get access to all of the photographs or did you take those yourself?
No, I didn't. They were all part of the White House Historical Association photo archive. And so we established those permissions early in the project. And so it was just opened up to me to choose images, anything from their collection. And there are a few outside images that weren't available, so we went to other libraries and other sources, but just one or two in the book that we felt were very important. But it was all from their collection. It's wonderful. If you have more information on the White House Historical Association, they have great programs. They have a lot of educational tools. The website is very informative, and it's the letter of introduction is from the president of the White House Historical Association, Neil Horstman, and it lists the website address for the White House Historical Association. It's very worth visiting, as is their visitor center in Washington, D.C.
Is that a .org or .com, the White House Historical
I think it's it is one or the other. It is a .org. Yes.
What began your interest in producing postcards?
The question was, yes, what began my interest in pop-up books? I've been very interested in architecture and design. In my background, I've had a studio in New York City for many years where I created one-of-a-kind commissions for people's homes. I paint murals, often historical architectural subjects. And I have a degree in fine arts and 2 years of study of architecture from the University of Kansas. So after I moved to New York, I got very involved in the world of interior design and just collecting books on design and travel. I love to visit great houses and gardens in America and in Europe. And then I started seeing pop-up books and just feeling like that extra dimension just added so much, because I was already doing scale renderings for clients. I had been doing them for years. And I actually first made a proposal to the publisher that was more involved in the interior design world than these renderings for interior rooms, but historical styles. And the publisher actually visited my studio, and he really liked my work, but he didn't think I had the right proposal at the time. So it was his suggestion, had I ever thought of a pop-up book. They had just had a great success on a pop-up book on New York City. And there was like finding this publisher, Rizzoli was finding this kind of niche market. And it just clicked. It was really just that. I had a few pop-up books in my collection, not extensive at the time. But I could just, it was one of those moments as an artist where, I knew that was just an avenue that would really, be a great way for me to, showcase my art. And my love of history as well. I love the research part of it. And I also want to credit that I work with a writer, and she and I research together, and then she writes it into one voice, and while I'm doing all the art. So now I think I'm going to sign some copies of the book if you like, and I think that's it.